Today I will be talking on how we can use generative AI to synthetically create, dynamically create craters that really don't exist um, through statistical methods and modern deep learning methods. So, what is our motivation for why do we want to create synthetically created craters? It's kind of an odd um, project because it's not a traditional discriminative method where we're trying to actually detect craters, which is commonly what's been done in the machine learning literature. Um, and crater generation allows us to study craters en masse. It allows us to look at thousands and thousands of craters and reconstruct those craters kind of like drawing a picture. Traditionally, the way that discriminative versus generative modeling is described is that generative modeling is like drawing a picture, and discriminative modeling is just like saying this is a cat, this is a dog. So, an generative version would be I'm drawing a picture of a cat and I'm drawing a picture of a dog. So, having a model or a deep learning model be able to recreate creators can tell us a lot of information about the underlying data distribution that we're studying. So specifically, we're applying the use case of craters because impact craters are very important for studying solar system formation. As most planetary bodies have some sort of impact cratering process, and so this process requires that every single crater should be studied and analyzed thoroughly. And this is pretty impossible for just one person to do every single crater, but it's actually fairly easy for millions of craters to be studied by deep learning methods and computational methods. Um, and another question that we're trying to answer is, can computer vision techniques pick up on patterns and craters that may have been overlooked by scientists? So just because of the large variety of different kinds of craters, like craters on Ganymede are going to look different than craters on Mars. Um, and then we can use these craters to recreate landscapes that we can then use in lunar simulations. And there's been recent work where craters have been, or that the model that we're using right now usually takes multiple steps, but there's been recent work that we can get the same type of quality in 1 or 2 steps, and you'll see what I mean by that in a future slide. So, why is artificial intelligence an appropriate solution? So, with the advent of AI is kind of like all the rage right now, and is a because of that, or it's gained a lot of traction recently because of how powerful of a tool it is. Deep learning methods can analyze images, text, audio, for example, like GPT-4 and ChatGPT. These models are trained on millions of gigabytes of data, and because of this, they're not super specific in the training process. So it's a very generalized training process. So to be able to underlie or understand the underlying distribution of craters, we have to have a very small curated data set. So that way, if you look at here on the right, this is ChatGPT's version or DALL-E 3's version of what a multi-ring impact basin on Europa would look like. As we know, multi-ring impact basins don't really look like concentric rings in this form. So fundamentally, our model is a representation of the impact cratering's probability distribution, as you can see by this figure here. We could say, for example, class A could be a simple craters, and then class B could be like a central peak type of crater. And then the really interesting thing is like when we put these into embedding space or we um, condition the model based off of these embeddings, you can actually, can you guys see my mouse? Awesome. So we can actually use, oh, there we go. Sorry. We can take the embedding of class A and the embedding of class C, and we can average them together to see what a crater would look like being interpolated between the two classes. So what would a crater look like if it was a combination of a simple and a central peak? And that's the kind of things that these networks allow us to do. Is neural networks are really, really good at interpolation, but not always the greatest at extrapolation. So our process is a pretty straightforward, simple, like traditional data science process. So we just gather and pre-process a novel data set. Then we select a model to generate fake craters, and then we train the selected model, and then we evaluate the craters produced by the model. So curating a data set of craters, the data set is derived from the lunar LROC and the Martian Viking global mosaics. So you can see this is the Mars images and the lunar images. We cropped them and centered them and then downscaled them to be 64 by 64 images. We specifically restricted where we got the craters to be between plus and minus 60 degrees. And then every single crater instance is paired with a planetary body and its corresponding radius. So that way we can condition the network to be able to reconstruct the craters properly. Some other things that we did is we did randomly rotate in terms of data augmentation. I'm not sure I mentioned this at my previous talk, but we randomly rotated the craters, and then also we turned all of the craters black and white because we were doing a single channel UNet instead of a 3-channel UNet for the diffusion model. So to kind of build off of that, there are many different model architectures to choose from. As I'm sure you guys are aware, we ended up choosing the denoising diffusion model architecture, which is a model architecture that is used by DALL-E 3 and Midjourney. And it was chosen because of its ability to learn multimodal distributions. So we can actually generate different types of craters. So the diffusion model training process is one that we iteratively add noise until we've completely destroyed the signal of the image or of the input. And then the reverse denoising process is where we start with an entire batch of noise, and then that batch of noise is then passed through the UNet multiple times over t time steps to finally create a generative model. What the heck? There we go. Yeah, I kind of went through that, but then our loss function is just a simple mean squared error where we're comparing the noise versus the predicted noise, which is our y hat. And then we use backpropagation to go and tell the network how to adjust its weights and biases. And then we repeat this until the loss function converges to 0 and it generates craters that don't exist. So this is an example of the diffusion process happening in real time, or not in real time, but like over the 1,000 different time steps. You can see it just slowly starts to reconstruct the signal of a crater. And then this is the pseudocode for the way that the denoising process works. It starts at t equals 1,000, passes the noise through the network, and then it predicts the noise, and then it removes the noise, and then re-adds it back, but instead of t equals 1,000, it equals t equals 999, and that's repeated until t is equal to 0. So there are many different samples of craters that we produced. My hypothesis of where the lighting distortions come from is probably that random rotation in the data augmentation. The generative model appears to have an affinity in generating smaller, older craters. All of these seem to be fairly eroded or older and maybe more lax. Lighting appears to be dynamic, which is consistent within individual samples. So lighting right here, and right here are all the same. But for example, this right here, all of the lighting, or let's see, all of the lighting here is on the right side, whereas on this side it's on the left side. It also appears as if the model can generate craters from both the lunar highlands and the lunar mare. So this, I would guess, this is the lunar highlands because it's brighter, and then the lunar mare is a little bit darker. It can generate very old craters, as we can see right here. And then it also is able to generate craters that are overlapping with fairly high fidelity. You don't really see, you can see that right here as well. You've got this superimposed on this one. And then it also generates middle-aged craters. And you can see there's some very small, sharp craters that you could potentially run some sort of super resolution algorithm on to assist in terrain generation, something like that. If we zoom in on the 64 by 64 pixels, as previously discussed, even on the very small ones, you can see this nice overlap between the craters with varying sizes. And then you can see it also picks up some non-crater features as well, and maybe some slumping walls on the edge of the craters. So in conclusion, AI can accurately model the crater morphology by computationally analyzing thousands of crater images. The model can produce craters with a specific probability distribution with an emphasis on high frequency of older, smaller craters. And then increasing the number of instances in the training set increases the performance of the model, allowing for a more thorough and statistically significant result. Going forward, we would like to increase the number of bodies and information that the model is trained with. And this is an important line of research because it bridges computational techniques, morphological studies, and allows landscapes to be modeled using generative methods, specifically with the use of generative AI in planetary science. So, thank you.